Good evening, everyone. Hello and welcome this evening to PMP Live. My name is Wendy Wasserman. I'm the Community Sales Manager here at Politics and Prose. Super delighted to have you here and to have both Tracey and Michae'l here as well. So thank you more than anything for continuing to support Politics and Prose, for continuing to support your indie bookstore. I recommend that you buy this fabulous book. Tracey's book came out this week. She just told me that she's super busy doing book tours and interviewing things. So you want to make sure that you get your copy. And we will put the link in the chat for you to be able to pick up a copy through us, which we could either send to you, or if you are in DC, you can come by and pick it up at the store. And when you are on our website buying the book, take a minute to cruise around and see what else you find. We actually offer some other things in addition to books, making books even more accessible. We do a Book of the Month Club where we curate books for you. We also run a speakers bureau where we can bring authors to your private business. So lots of different things that we offer. So to tonight, for those of you who are veterans of PMP Live, you know the deal. You know that your mic is on mute. And that if you have any questions for Tracey or for Michae'l, that please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Don't put them in the chat. If you can put them in the Q&A box, that way Michae'l can see them when we get to the Q&A part of the conversation. And likewise, if you need closed captioning, we've enabled that, and you can turn that on at the bottom of your screen as well. So let's get to the heart of the matter here. And tonight's discussion of Black Joy by Tracey Michelle Lewis-Giggetts. She schooled me on how to pronounce her name, and I've already messed it up, so apologies. Tracey is the author of 18 books and the host of the podcast Heart Talk with Tracey Michelle. And her writing has also appeared in a variety of publications, including the Washington Post, which you probably know her from, and Essence, Oprah Daily, and a whole bunch of others. Tracey is going to be in conversation today with Mocha Ochoa, and Mocha is the founder and CEO of the Oracle Group International in Harlem, New York, which is an internationally recognized public relations firm specializing in connecting clients with opportunities that engage, uplift, and empower local, national, and global communities. She is an award-winning international strategist, a sought-over literary public relations and integrated marketing professional, and international diversity and multicultural program developer, and a literary activist. And we are super delighted that Mocha is joining us from New York, Tracey's joining us from New Jersey, and this is the first time that they have met face-to-face, so you guys are in for a treat. And take it away, you two.
Yeah. Hello, Tracey. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, GMV, everyone who's tuning in. Welcome, Tracey. How are you today?
I am full of gratitude. I am so thankful to be here and to talk to you.
Wow. So you've had some, I thank you for asking me to be a part of this tour. I'm honored. I mean, you've had some heavy hitters so far. I'm like, but humble. Wow, me. But wow,
you're a heavy hitter too.
Okay, you know what? I read it. Yes. Thank you. And that, that's part of what you talk about, that we have to be better at accepting compliments and realizing who we are, right?
Yes.
But who did you start off with? Who did the book dropped Tuesday, and who did you start with?
Bernice McFadden, one of my faves. And then last night yesterday I was with Tabitha Brown during the day and Dante Stewart in the evening. Just a phenomenal day. So far so good.
Awesome. And when your baby dropped on Tuesday, how did it feel? I know this is 13? Number 13?
It's 18, but it felt different for me, right? Because a big portion of my career was in the independent world, right? In smaller presses, independent press, and then also doing collaborations and that kind of thing. So right now I feel like it's just it's at another level. I'm learning a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't know
Yeah.
about this publishing business, and it's been a ride, and I'm enjoying the ride.
Well, you deserve it. Like I was saying when I was doing some promo for the book, saying this is the book that you didn't even know you needed. Like, congratulations on this book. It's soul food, and you're not going to make me cry today. Just letting you know, but but they were good tears. They were good tears. I laughed. I cried. The way you presented the information. Where did the inspiration come from? When did you first get the thought to do this book?
It really began with my own journey of unpacking what joy was in my life, right? And I was sitting in my therapist's office, and she asked me, what does joy feel like?
Mhm.
And I couldn't answer her, at this big age of 40 something.
Yeah.
And I couldn't put my finger on it. I didn't know what it felt like in my body. So it began a journey of like understanding the embodied experience of joy, right? Like connecting to it, creating that mental snapshot that I can call up when I need it. That was some work for me. And then after that, just began writing about it as I'm known and want to do, and really began to look at how Black folks in general, they kind of, I use my story as an entry point to look at how we as a people have wielded joy. And it really is about wielding it, using it as a tool and as a resource for resistance, yes, but I think the book speaks more to our healing, right? Yes. And as it's resistance, absolutely, but sometimes resistance can get muddied a little bit because we're so focused on the gaze, right? Yes. So like, it's really about the healing.
It is. It is. And so around what time frame? Because I know you start writing about, you start off in the pandemic. Yeah. So is that exactly when you started to write this book?
I had been touching it, right? Like I'd been writing pieces and essays prior to just doing my own exploration on the page about joy and Black joy. But it was during the pandemic when I had an opportunity. I went to a workshop and had an opportunity to pitch the Washington Post this story. And the funny thing, Mocha, is all of this could have not happened because I was terrified. I am behind the scenes, let me shoot my pitch off via email and see. But this was a verbal pitch. I had to actually talk to the editor and say, this is what I'm thinking, this is the idea, etc., which was something that I had not done before. And I almost backed out. I almost said no. And then there were some people in the group, they were like, what do you have to lose? Just pitch it. And from that day until now, it has just been a ride. I wrote it. It ran in the Washington Post the following week. This is right in the middle of the protests and the uprisings, and obviously the pandemic. And then not too long after that, my ghostwriting agent said, sent it out to another agent, and then we went to auction, and then it was, and so on and so on. It was, so, I would say timeline, it was basically over a year from that point that I really began to draft the book that you have.
Right. And did you originally plan to go as deep as you did in this book?
I did not.
Okay.
You know what? I said this last night, and I'll say it, till I'm blue in the face, that this was probably the most liberating experience. chose is a weird word for me, but I suppose I did decide to be as free as I needed to be. I'd worry about the other stuff later, right? Like I wanted to tell my story and explore my discoveries and share my heart without limitation.
Right.
And when you do that, when you decide that you're going to open up in that way, you're going to bleed on the page in that way, all this stuff comes up. So I was in therapy every week, like.
I was not even prepared. I thought I was going to be reading some stories of joy. Like, I remember when I skipped along, my sisters and stuff, dancing in the rain, and this was joyful to us. I had no idea that I was about to go into surgery in a good way, in a healing way. I mean, I said one time with Chimamanda Adichie when she wrote about the Biafran War, Half of the Yellow Sun.
Half of the Yellow Sun,
that I'd never read someone write about pain so beautifully and so accurately. And that's exactly what you did here, because before there were some things that you spoke about. So let's just go into some of the things. I mean, I'll just jump right in there. When you talk about being a survivor of abuse, like, I wasn't quite sure where you were going, but I knew where you were going. But it pulled you in that you couldn't stop reading. And it was like, yeah. Like the way you describe from a child to, and they talk about, healing your inner child, but that's exactly what it reminded me of. Did you originally decide that this was going to be part of?
Now you're gonna make me cry. I knew that was part of my story, and I knew that it had to show up. I'd written about it in previous writings, right? But one of the things I wanted to do was, and again, I feel like I've said this over and over again, hold the truth sacred and to tell it from my POV. But what that means is that to tell it from my point of view only also means that I have to tell it from 8-year-old Tracey's point of view also. Right. Which is different from 46-year-old Tracey.
Right.
And so that process was really challenging for me, because I believe in the power of intention. Like, I believe that, I didn't approach these essays with, let me spill the tea, sometimes we read revenge writing, right? Where we're like trying to get back. That was not the point. The point was to really unpack how grief and pain lives in the same container as joy.
Yes.
That they, and our ancestors have known that, right? And so when you talk about Black folks being the most resilient people in the world, that's what that is about, is understanding that even when happiness escapes us, which is temporary, that joy can be a constant. It can be an undercurrent. It can live under the pain, above the pain, alongside the pain. And I walked that out. Like, I literally had to walk that out. And it wasn't easy, but it was necessary.
Yeah. You put words to, I think, what a lot of women who have been through that experience. You just put words to it. From the vulnerability of it, to the pain of it, to the hurt of it, to the taking your power back of it, and that's to be commended. So, okay, that alone was okay. The book seems to be about, well, first you said something there that I do want to get to, which is the difference between, you talk about the difference between happiness and joy. Can you tell us about that?
For me, happiness is, this temporary moment of, pleasure, right? Like, when we think about happiness and joy, I deeply want Black folks to return to the body, because I think it tells us a lot, right? And it is physiologically, it is hormones firing, dopamine, serotonin we experience. That's our response to pleasure. It's a universal thing. Happiness, though, is a moment. Happiness is, I'm on this ride at Six Flags and it's so much fun. Woo! Or, he asked me out, girl. Yeah, it's that. Right. Joy doesn't require you to be happy, right?
Okay.
Joy is, you might be happy that you got the tickets to the concert, but joy is the movement in your spirit when you're listening to Frankie Beverly and Maze, right?
Right.
It
Right.
is the thing that sustains you. And I say in the intro that when Black happiness escaped our ancestors because of enslavement or Jim Crow or any number of things, colonization, all those things, joy couldn't be stolen. So there were ways that we embodied joy, right? That, may have looked different to outsiders, right? So for instance, I talk about, and my mom was blown when I discovered, but like the hand games that we play, you remember, down, down, baby, down by the roller coaster, all of that, handball, where you been, and from the outside, from the big house, that looks like, oh, they just frivolity, right? This is touch. This is intimacy, right? This is connection, right? So that's joy at work. Like that's finding the joy when happiness is nowhere to be found. And so I think if we understand that, then we won't keep joy so much at a distance.
Right.
We won't think that joy is something out there that we have to go get. We would recognize that it's with us always.
Right. Right. When you were talking about that, so my family is from Trinidad, right? And I thought about when I was reading that portion, I thought about, the slaves in Trinidad, and they had that, one time period where they could just be free and happy, and that was Carnival. They could put on what they want. They could put on. So culturally, from the outside looking in, it's like, oh yeah, and then people just like to get naked and wind up their waist and fling around their waist. But it comes from such a deep cultural, a deep cultural sense of joy and freedom and celebration of culture. And this is something that we can understand. You may not be able to get it, but we get it, and it's so ingrained in us. But it's not just Caribbean culture, it's drum beats, right? It's drum beats. That goes from church to, you listen to Afro beats, you listen to it's us and this drum. And there's a joy that comes from us that's ancestral, I believe, because where do we get this drum beat from that gives us so much joy?
Absolutely. It's ancestral. It's the reason why every major musical genre in America has come from us, right? You can't name something, right? The from gospel, from the spirituals, from the Negro spirituals to the blues, to the jazz, to the rock and roll, to the R&B, to the funk, to the hip hop, to like what name something, to country. Hello? All of it is rooted in our joy, our alchemy, right? Of turning, this circumstance, our historical circumstance, our present day circumstance. Toni Morrison tells us that, it's in crisis that the artists come out, right? Like it's our time. And so our alchemy, our ability to transform is at the core of who we are as members of the African diaspora. So yes, those beats, they call to us.
They do.
Right? With them little TikTok dances, them ain't new. Gone over to West Africa.
Right. There's a certain joy. And I was talking to a person that does house music that is working on a book. And we were talking about the same thing. House music and that boom and that, it's the same thing, that buildup of, there's just something inside of that just explodes with that buildup. And it's ancestral. It's joy,
It's joy manifest, right? It is the joy. And that's why I think it's important for us to return to our bodies.
Yes.
Right? Because I keep saying that. And I think that's where I got my healing, because I was so disembodied. I was so disconnected.
And you don't know it until you know it, right?
Until, for me, it was severe health crisis. You're knocked on your butt for 8 months and you can't go nowhere and do nothing. And you realize that.
And you're stuck with yourself.
Yes.
I think that's what the pandemic did to a lot of us, right? That there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, that, okay, I've got to deal with self. I can't distract with work. I can't distract. I mean, for everything, even, with the George Floyd thing, it was, with everything, with all of the other events, we'll say, that happened with the killing of our people, people could go to work the next day and be distracted by the bus or this and that. No, you were forced to sit and watch that. Right. Everyone was. So we were in those four walls for months and months, not knowing what's going to happen, but knowing we had to deal with ourselves every day. Yes. And I love what Amanda Seales said one time. She said, therapy, everybody thinks therapy, I'm working on myself, it's great. But the beginning part of it is a bunch of
unearthing,
the ugliest, like all the. And it's Absolutely. Up to you to take a look and keep going and clean it up, or just, I've had enough here.
Absolutely. Right? It is an unearthing of ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. Which is the reason why I, because I feel like, okay, if you're isolated like we were during quarantine and that kind of thing, sometimes if you're unearthing without anyone to help you sort it out, right, or anyone to support you in that unearthing, it can be problematic. And that's when we start talking about mental and emotional health. And for me, it was about connecting to what these emotions felt like in my body. See, I couldn't connect to joy. Like, I didn't know what joy felt like in my body, but I knew what rage. I could call up rage. I could think of one thing and go there.
Right.
Sorrow, I could access. Think of one thing, be bawling, face completely wet. But for some reason, I didn't know what joy felt like in my body until I was sitting watching This Is Us and had a moment of like, because, I love good storytelling and I'm watching, these characters and I'm just all in and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This is joy. Like, I'm feeling joy in my body. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah. And it's not about This Is Us. It's about, okay, I was self-aware because I'd been in therapy, self-aware enough to stop in that moment and say, okay, my fingers feel like this, my chest feels like this. Oh, like my heart is beating a certain way. This is joy. And then take that mental snapshot of it so that when grief knocked on my door 2 weeks later, and grief knocked on my door 6 months later, and grief knocked on my door a year later, I could reference. I had a mental reference for joy. I had something that I could access, right? That it's not going to take the pain away because they're all living in the same space. It's not going to take it away, but I could leverage it so that I don't go off the deep end.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know if you've seen that clip that's been going around on Instagram with Tom Hanks, and he was talking about this too shall pass. And he was talking about grief and sorrow, this too shall pass. He's saying, but good times and the greatest times, remember, this too shall pass. So when you were talking about that, it's like, yeah, we can equally access all of these emotions. Like we don't have to deny ourselves of any one over the other. All of them are available to us, but we as a people have kind of separated ourselves from it and thinking, we're never going to be able to get no joy. We've only got these pockets of happiness, right? Yeah. So what was it in your therapeutic process? And and it was very brave to be going through therapy and writing about it at the same time and letting us all into it. But what was there a point in there? Like, did you always have Black joy in mind and the fact that we're able to access it anytime we want to? Or is this something that you learned through the process of your therapy and writing?
I think I had been in therapy for a little while before I started writing. So I'd already begun to wrestle with joy and
Isn't that interesting? Wrestle with joy?
Right, exactly. Like I was literally wrestling with it. And to your point that you just said, I have so much grace for our ancestors because I know that the reason why sometimes we feel, ancestors in present day, feel like we can't access joy is because the systems tell us that we're not supposed to. The dehumanization that we see on a regular basis says that, Black woman, you're not allowed joy.
Right.
We see your frustration, we see your anger, we're gonna label it that. But joy is not for you, right? And our joy makes people who are perpetuators and beneficiaries of these systems angry, right? It makes them upset. And so there were things that we had to put in place in order to, in under the guise of safety and survival, right? I'm saying that my desire with this book is that we move out of safety and survival and into who we are, have always been, and embracing the fullness of that to thrive, right? To thrive as we are. So as far as like I was doing genealogical work. So I was looking at my great great grandmother. I was going to therapy. I was doing deep trauma work, EMDR, all of these kinds of things. And then I wrote the first essay that ended up in the Washington Post, like that about dancing, in the rain with my daughter.
Right.
And so I feel like the essays benefited from that time in therapy, but I was still going. So I was still unpacking. And so as I'm unpacking, you're absolutely right. Some of that stuff is flowing into the work that I'm doing.
Right.
But there was a substantial amount of work that had already been done prior.
Got it. I love the way you talk about Black women and love and our unique type of way of loving. I love how you talk about that for multiple reasons, because I'm sure you have found yourself in the position too, not supposed to have joy. Yes, it's supposed to be angry. Found yourself I've caught myself at my children's school. Don't get too angry. Don't get too upset. You don't want to be that woman, because you know how we are. We're labeled. We fly off the handle. Okay, all right. But I love the way you talk about us in the sense of how loving we are and how deep we love, and how, how much we connect and uplift our sisters, and the importance of Black women intergenerational, how much we love those around us. Yeah. That essay and that love letter to Black women, where did that come from? And of course, grandmother, let's hear if you could segue right into your grandmother with that.
I wish the world knew just how connected Black women's liberation is to the liberation of the world. Right? I really wish they understood the power and the love that we carry in us. So when I wrote the blacker the love, a portion of that had been published in Essence magazine, and it really was, as you said, a love letter to Black women. I wanted to celebrate how we are with each other. Whenever we talk about, Black love, hashtag Black love, it is, this very, it's about relationships, right?
Yeah.
It's about, your significant other, your partner, and that represents Black love. But I was like, Black love has so much breadth and depth, right? And it encompasses the way we speak to each other, the way that we say, "Come on, legs, come on," the way that sauce, that flavor, that the way of being, the way we move, the way we care for each other, the way, sis, you all right? You okay? You got like the way that I just wanted to just explore that, because I'd seen that. Right. And the thing is, it didn't look the way that it didn't look in sort of these prepackaged ways of loving. Right. Sometimes from the outside looking in, it might have looked harsh. It might have looked like this person is not being loving. So when I looked at my grandmother, I had to look in the nuances of her life, not in the big detail, like the big story. Oh, she lived here, she did that, but like in the nuances of the way she would make me, steak, and I was 3 years old sucking on a gristle.
Right.
Or Yeah, like the way she reinvented herself, the way she cackled and had a good time talking about Victor Newman with
Right,
with her girlfriends, right? Like these were things that I just were part of my life that I wasn't exactly naming as Black love, but was very much Black love. And
right,
so I think in that piece, if I was going to talk about Black joy, there's no way that I was not going to talk about the women in my life, my lineage, and there's no way that I was going to not talk about women, Black women in general.
right, right. And speaking of lineage, you talk about some pretty painful times for you and your family, which I had no idea. Well, first of all, growing up and coming from Louisville, Kentucky, and unfortunately that you have experienced and your family has experienced firsthand what society does to our families and what we're dealing with now with our societies. And may your cousin rest in peace. But in dealing with that, how are you able to find joy knowing that your family, you have firsthand experienced what you see in the headlines all the time? How
Yeah.
are you able to look beyond that and still dig and maintain constant joy?
Yeah.
These times, yeah.
It's not easy. Um, yeah, in 2018, my cousin, elder cousin, I called her aunt because that's what Black folks do. If they was your cousin was of a certain age, they was auntie.
Yeah.
So my aunt Vicky walked into a grocery store in Louisville, Kentucky to get some food and happened to be there at the wrong time, and a white man decided that he would come in and shoot her and another Black man, a grandfather that was there with his grandson, um, came out of the building. There was a white guy there who had pulled out his gun. He says, no, whites don't kill whites, and it was clearly a racially motivated. Just a few minutes prior to that, he had tried to open the doors of a Black church that my parents attend, a Black church that my parents was just there an hour before he was trying to get into the doors. And Charleston had caused the church to put some securities in place. It's the only reason why he was able to not get into the building, but they have him on camera. So it was going to hit my family regardless, whether it was going to be my parents in Bible study or whether it was going to be my cousin shopping. And Mocha, when I tell you that took me out, like I had been writing about race and Trayvon Martin and racial reconciliation and what needs to happen in social justice, and I had been writing about it. Um, but it's different when it hits home. It's something it's something shifts in you, right? So I believe that grieving was part of my body shut down the following year, because I went into overdrive. Like I'm going to write about this. I'm going to go hard in diversity, equity, inclusion work on campus. I'm just going to go hard. But what I was doing was hiding and pushing against the stuff that needed to come out of me, right? And it wasn't until like I had been not on bed rest, but like practically not being able to go anywhere because of the pain that was in my body. And it wasn't until I think about 6 months into that, where I went to an acupuncturist talking about embodiment, right? I went to an acupuncturist and she put a needle. I'm going for like just pain and that kind of thing. And she goes and she put a needle right here. I'll never forget. I've gone before. I'm not scared of the needles. It's not a big deal. She put the needle in and I wailed. I mean, in hindsight, it's kind of funny because I was bawling, but I was looking around like, what's happening to me? Like, so I'm like, like all of this emotion, all of this grief just came pouring out of me with that one point that she touched. And from there, I realized that, there is a very clear physical chronic illness, but then there was also trauma that was trapped that I needed to let out. And so I think part of the work of making room for joy or allowing joy to show itself was about right sizing my experience of grief. I couldn't change, the grief was there, it's still there. I recently lost, within the last 2 weeks, 2 family members. So imagine grieving while you have to go out on the road, or on the road to talk about joy.
Yeah.
There's no way that I could have done that work. There's no way that I could have done this had I not learned how to let joy live in the same space.
Absolutely.
And so I would say over the 2 or 3 years, that's what that journey has been like, going back and forth between grief and rage and sorrow and joy.
Yeah.
And making sure that I am intentional about creating joy moments for myself.
A lot of authors say this, but they get tried on the very same subject that you're writing about. It's like, okay, well, you're an expert, huh? All right.
Listen. Absolutely. It is when my another cousin just passed 2 weeks ago, and when I got the news, I was like, really? So this is what we doing?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to like literally live this out. All this stuff that I'm talking about, like grief is in the same container as joy. And I'm gonna have to live it out. Yeah. Oh, okay. So yes, absolutely, that's my experience. Yeah. But I'm hoping that by telling my story, by telling our stories, that someone will read the book and then begin their own work of figuring out what joy feels like and creating their own snapshot, and then maybe telling their own story. That's what I hope.
Yeah. It really, for me, it was therapy in motion, because but I, like many of us, realized that we needed therapy, and then once we got there, it was like, what took us so long? Like, this is great. You just want to hear about me for a whole hour. It was this great outlet, but at the same time, facing yourself and dealing with yourself and discovering and learning. But you gave us also some ideas, and also let us know that we weren't alone, and gave us different ways to kind of channel this. And okay, I understand you're dealing with this, because even in therapy, you bring it up and your hour's up, and now how do I go in? So these were some great stories of, okay, well, this is how she processed it. So please know that none of it is in vain. Like, you are doing the work out here with this. I'm telling you, I said, she ain't gonna make, I'm not crying today. But we do have some questions. I want to get to some folks' questions. First, okay. Your wonderful person, Yona, who's magic in herself. Hey, Yona. And she's funny too. She's, remember when I was saying that this is the book I didn't know I needed? So sometimes Yona is just one of those people too. It's a divine connector. So, Moki, you're gonna do this? Yeah. Next thing you know, I'm doing it. Okay. But I didn't even know how much I needed to do this, right? Because it was really, really therapeutic for me. But let's go to questions. She wants to know, what are some of the ways you have learned to access your joy in a world that seems to glorify our pain?
Yeah, that's a good question, particularly because we're in Black History Month. And sometimes I feel like as much as I love hearing about our history and how we've overcome, I feel like sometimes it's used as a way to kind of glorify, as she just said, glorify our pain. And so that's why I'm on a mission to say Black joy is Black history. So we're gonna balance this thing out. From some of the more tangible things that I've gotten into in the last few years has been contemplation and meditation. I have to get still, and that is not my MO. Like, I'm a striver. I used to be, I should say, I'm gonna put these all in the past tense. Used to be someone who was always grinding and bought into the lie. I love the Nat Bishop, because checks us at every moment, with the way that we talk about rest and productivity. Well, I was the one that, because I believed that I wasn't worthy unless I was performing. And I didn't believe that I could just be, and I could just be still, and that I could still have value and love. I connected my value very clearly to my performance and my productivity. So if I did not do that dance, if I did not produce, then I somehow was not loved, somehow was not, I'm not worthy, right? And so for me, it's been about getting still, prayer, meditation, um, grounding myself, all of those tools that I learned from therapy, right? Like all those tools of like silencing, all the people. My therapist always talks about the people on the bus. These are all the people. There's 8-year-old Tracey, there's 25-year-old Tracey, there's 17-year-old Tracey, there's 35-year-old Tracey, there's like all of these people that we love. But when they are driving your bus, they are operating from that point in time, right? So whatever you needed to be safe when you were 8, if that 8-year-old is driving the bus, she's giving you something that you may not need anymore. You don't need that crutch. You don't need that tool. And so my practical application again is about being still, really examining my faith, and even before we talked, like I sat in stillness and I had, this mantra playing, like, I am enough. Yes, politics and prose. Yes, it's the amazing mocha, right? Like, yes, it's all those things, but I am enough and I can just show up as Tracey and it'll be okay. I could not have done that prior to writing this book or prior to the process because I was so wrapped up in, this stuff defining me. And so, yeah, I mean, practically it is prayer and meditation. It's taking, my daughter is like the demonstration of my liberated self. Like she's like looking in a mirror, but just looking at the free version of myself. Right. And like I watch her all the time and I'm in awe, because and I'm grateful that I've been able to give her a safe place to be free. And I do worry about when she gets old enough to go out into that world when they start to, speak to that. But I'm hoping that she's had such a foundation of being her free Black girl self, which is what she calls herself. I'm a free Black girl mama. So, she's had enough of that will sustain her when that stuff starts to hit her hard. So watching her is another really practical. Watch your children. Like your children will reveal to you everything.
Yeah, they do.
I love you, Mocha. I do.
Look.
Because I can feel your heart through this screen, and so like
I'm telling you, I'm like, please keep talking. So I said I wasn't gonna cry. Yeah, I found the same thing, and it's funny. That's something that I was just dealing with not too long ago. Some people call me Mocha, some people call me Margot, but I really found again that I was showing up as Mocha, but not quite showing up as Margot, because Mocha's the professional, but Margot, you know what I mean? So it's funny that again, you put words and examples to all of these things and let us know that we're not alone. And yeah, that is something that worthiness, right? And how do we show up as ourselves? And whew, yeah, I got you. And you're right, there is so much healing with our children when we see those traits that they pick up from us. And it's like, you know what? Well, how can I retrain? Because it's funny how they are that little girl that we're trying to heal, right?
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
Of it right there. Absolutely. And we do a lot of our healing through them, right? So another chance for us to heal.
100%. 100%. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, another question. I love your description. Thank you, Yona. I love your description of joy and pain living in the same container. Do you believe that joy and pain are two sides of the same coin, like law of polarity, I guess?
That's a very good question that I'm not sure that I know the answer to. I do know. I do know that they exist in the same space. They also exist in the same space as rage and sorrow and every other emotion that we have. It is how we were the beautiful nature of our creation is that we hold all those emotions. So I think it. I don't know if I would say two sides of the same coin, because then that doesn't account for all of those other emotions that are present, right? I think that it's less about a coin, or like in that they are one, like all of those entities are, you know, part of us, right? That and when we need them, when our body needs to active, I mean, even fear, right? Like fear, in its proper context are the things that, keep us from running in the middle of the street, or or that kind of thing, right? But fear that is all consuming, that's taking up too much space, right, will edge out joy and edge out these other things. So I think it's about them being right sized, within this one body, right, within this one soul, if you will. So it's a good question. I probably need to ponder that. If somebody asks me that in 2 weeks, I might have a different answer. But I think that's where I will go today.
Right, right. I've always kind of looked at it as, when that's the only way I can make it make sense to myself, the whole polarity thing, that, it gives you the chance. So joy and pain, that, when pain is showing up, it's showing up because there's some place that you need to kind of balance that pain out to create space for more joy. So that pain is coming so that you can, balance it out and create a little less pain so you can add a little bit more joy.
I like that.
Show up, yeah, to show up in spaces, yeah. It gives you the opportunity to create more joy.
Yeah, so to me, like hearing you say that, it's almost like it's a continuum more than anything. And so where you're sitting, wherever you need to be on that continuum, will tell you the work that needs to be done, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
pain reveals the work that needs to be done. Even
Right.
joy reveals to you where you are in a particular moment, right? So like, yeah, it's like a continuum of consciousness. I like that. I like that.
Yeah, yeah. We should write a book together. No.
Come on, come on now.
Look at me as expert now. No, I need to absorb more of this.
Well, I tell people, I was like, if you are looking for the joy expert, I am not it. I am a person with a story. And actually Dante Stewart yesterday said something that I'm still wrestling with, was he's like, you're a theologian of joy, which kind of sat nicely with me because it resonated, because I feel like when you think about a theologian, you think about study, right? And examination and curiosity, right? And I think that's where I am. Like I'm on a journey, and I'm sharing my journey with the whole wide world, but I'm sharing it so that they can so anyone who's reading can discover their own journey. So anyone, they can have the response that you have is like, yeah, that really moved me and got me to thinking about my life. That's the goal, not to be an expert per se, right?
Yeah, and to continue to grow. I think the best teaching, that you're doing, the best way to teach is to show folks. And that's why, I would say books are the blueprint. You can hear someone speak, but they're giving you the blueprint. So you all are the teachers. You're teaching us through your experiences how you were able to get on the other side. So yeah, I love that. I love that. So Anonymous says, absolutely beautiful work that you've written. I began crying just from the introduction alone and look forward to cite you in my dissertation. I am wondering your thoughts on how we can use Black joy as a framework to challenge different institutions, such as higher education or the criminal justice system.
Very good. So I think it's very powerful. Black joy is connected to our humanity, right? And so I think it's powerful to when we begin to develop policies and programs that center our joy, because it's a demonstration, it's an expression of our humanity, right? And some of what we're seeing has nothing to do with necessarily who wants us to have what, right? It has to do with not even being seen as, white supremacy, being, that we are inferior, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think programs and strategies that focus or center our joy as a form of resistance is important. But here's the catch. And then what I tried to cover in the book was sometimes Black joy as resistance places too much emphasis on the perception of other people and not how we commune with each other.
Okay.
Right? So that story that I told about me and my daughter dancing in the backyard in the rain, and it's Gen X versus Gen Z and the whole nine, but I was conscious of the Trump supporter down the street. I was conscious of what they may be thinking about us dancing and being loud in the backyard, right? And in hindsight, year or two after writing that, I thought about, like, yes, like our joy was defiant in that moment. Our joy was palpable, was powerful. But could I have been 100% present in it if I was also conscious of the gaze? And so I think that Black joy as resistance within these structures is necessary, but I just want us to be careful that we're not centering other people as opposed to ourselves, that it's really about our communities and the way that we show up and see ourselves as opposed to how we are seen. Right. I hope that answers the question, but
I love that. I love that because it puts it centers it on your authentic joy and not as a take that.
Yes.
Because I don't care if you take it or not.
Right now, I'm free.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Perfect as we wind down, as we get to. I love that last chapter. I love it. I love it. I love it. Mm-hmm. And you talk about freedom in such a way that that doesn't, and I have to compare it to feminism. And what is feminism? Well, what does it mean to you? We can't really gauge what you're a feminist, or are you a feminist? You can't really gauge it because it's kind of really personal. And it's not up to me to tell you what your joy is. We wish you joy, but I'm really responsible for my joy. Mm-hmm. And to get rid of it, you got to get rid of, as Miss Morrison says, that shit that weighs you down. So if you could just, lead us out of here soaring on wings of what you were trying to say, the bottom line with Black joy, mm-hmm. What would you like to see us take from this as a people?
Mm-hmm. That the pathway to our freedom, our liberation, the route to our healing is joy. It is joy. When I was laying in the bed and couldn't do much, it was watching back-to-back stand-up comedy shows on Netflix and laughter, gut laughter, that was part of the balm, that it was a healing balm for me, right? The laughter was. And so if we never dismantle these systems, if we never get the policies and the Voting Rights Act and all the things that we deserve as a people, right? We absolutely do. If we never get it, we can get our healing. We can get free. Our freedom is not contingent on that. So if anything, I just hope that people will see joy as a route and a pathway to their personal healing so that we can all collectively heal.
Beautiful, beautiful. Where can we find you, Tracey?
You can find me. My website is traceymlewis.com. So that's an entry point for all the things that I do. I'm on Instagram at TMLG Writer. On Facebook is TMLG Writer. and I'm on Twitter as TM Lewis. So that's all the things and all the places.
Okay, I know Politics and Prose is about to come on and tell you where you can get this fantastic.
You can get the book.
Yes.
We put the link in the chat for you, but you can get the book through us, which we would love. But you know, it's on sale, and I have to say, Tracey and Mocha, you are more than enough. So thank you both for being here, and congratulations, Tracey, on this really wonderful piece of thoughtful thinking. So,
yeah.
Thank you for this book, Tracey. Thank you. You're beautiful. Oh my gosh, this book is just, everyone run and go and get this. It's perfect for such a time as this. Thank you for your transparency, and thank you, Politics and Prose, for giving us the platform to share this wonderful work.
I just want to say one thing, because of the season we're in with the pandemic and everything. I am determined at the end of every one of these events to give people their flowers while they are still here. And Mocha, I want to give you your flowers. I thank you for the work that you do. I thank you for the presence. I'm grateful for who you are even becoming, Margot. I thank you so much. And I just want you to know that, like was just said, you are absolutely enough. If you didn't do another thing, you have made your mark in this world. So I thank you. So I just wanted to make sure I say that to you.
Thank you. Love you, sis. All right.
Good night, all. Thank you.
All right.